Last time on Narrative Tutorials by Decryption. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and in today's video we're going to be adding profile pictures to the dialogue in Narrative. It's a highly requested feature on the Discord chat, so I figured I'd show you how to do it, and it's incredibly simple to do. So there are a couple of ways of adding it, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you two ways. One, using the Narrative UI and just using blueprints, and the second way, which is more efficient, is using C++. And now, before you all run away, the C++ is like 3 lines of code, and I will guide you from the start to the end. It is super simple. So first thing we have to do is we have to find the narrative blueprint widgets. So to get this, you need to make sure you have the engine folder turned on. So simply go to settings and make sure you tick engine content and plugin content. Once you've done that, you can click engine plugins and then scroll all the way down to narrative content and then narrative UI and then widgets. And then in here, you will see all the widgets that build up narrative. So we have the dialogue option, which is what you select for the player to talk, and then we have the default UI. So you can just jump in and modify it if you wish. However, I don't want it affecting narrative for every single project I use on the engine, because editing it is engine wide. So instead, I'm going to duplicate it and make a secondary version of it that I can use if I require. So I'm going to simply copy this and just do copy here. There we go. And I'm going to rename it to profile pictures. What I'm also going to do is duplicate this BP dialogue option here, because it gives us the ability to modify this if we really want to, and it all encapsulates nicely. So I'm going to come and open both of these up. Now we do have to change some settings because otherwise narrative is not going to compile, but it's super easy to do, so follow along. If you go inside your dialogue option into the graph, you will see you have an owning widget here. Simply change it to be your new profile picture narrative default UI. Don't click dialogue option, this one is narrative default UI, and it'll say would you like to change the variable type. Just click yes. Now you will notice we've got a few errors, so we can just come in and we just really fix it. So I'm going to unselect that, and I'm just going to set the lock dialogue UI and just make sure everything's dragged into the right place. And I'm going to come here, I'm going to refresh this node here and reconnect it up. And you will notice you won't be able to drag self up here. We will solve this in a minute. The first thing to do is to change the fixed error here. So I'm just going to unbind it and then just rebind it like that. Now we need to fix the next reply. So if you just double click it, you'll be taken into the narrative profile pictures for the dialogue. And you can see here we have the select reply event. And if you click it, you can simply see right here, it expects the option to be the original one. So I'm going to change this to profile pictures and I'm going to set it to the dialogue option. There we go. And now if you compile this version, and I'm just going to re-get all the nodes that I need. Now we can compile the narrative default UI. So if I come back over to the dialogue option and I can drag the self in, works perfectly fine. And we have one more over here that we just need to reattach, like so. So now that you have fixed this select reply, we need to change this cast here. So currently this cast is casting to the old dialogue option. We don't need that now. So if I drag from the array element, and I'll just do cast to dialogue option profile picture, like so. And I will drag this to all the relevant places it needs to be, such as the set visibility, the checker, and now we can safely delete this dialogue option. We can come down here and we can simply get the buttons we need. So select get reply button and we will drag it into the set enabled. I can delete the old one, and then I can do the exact same to get the player reply, delete the old one, and then drag it into the correct place. Make sure you match up all your exec events, otherwise it won't work. Compile and save. Another place we need to go to is right at the bottom, Neil. There's a handle event key here. As you can see, we've got another cast here. So simply drag off, cast to your dialogue option blueprint profile pictures, and just start linking it all up. So I'm going to drag in the simulate clicked event and I'm going to connect it up to the true and delete the old one. And then I can delete this one and then simply plug ours into the player reply. Like so. Compile and save. The next thing I'm going to do is go up to the event graph here because it's a much easier way to find it. I'm going to open up the dialogue event graph and I'm going to jump into on BP dialogue replies available. And I'm going to double click it. It'll take us right into the event. And as you can see here, it's going to loop through all of the dialogue options the player has to say, and it's going to create the old options here. So we're just going to replace this with our new dialogue option and everything should just sit nicely and work. And that's how you make a clone of narrative. So now we have 2 separate narrative UIs working if we need to do anything with. I'm not going to duplicate the quest branch, but it'll be the similar process. So now just to make sure it's working, I'm going to press Control P just to open an asset and I'm going to search for my player. and I'm going to find where I spawn narrative here, and instead of just spawning the default one, I'm going to spawn our special BP narrative default profile pictures UI, and then just test it to make sure it builds these no errors. And as you can see, everything works completely fine. We get the quest started up, we can collect the blue key, we can collect the red key, and we can successfully talk it and complete the quest. So that's how you make a duplicate instance of the narrative UI. So now you can make your changes separately. I will drop these steps into the description to give you a nice easy way around it. You of course might not want to duplicate the narrative UI. I've simply done it because I have other projects running in tandem. So now we branch off. We have two methods of adding profile pictures. They are both really easy, but it depends what you want to do. For the first step, we're going to simply add it to our new dialogue option. I'm going to open up the new narrative UI, and I'm going to make sure I'm in the designer here. So I'm going to simply go to the palette here, and I'm going to search for an image, and I'm going to drop it in roughly between the NPC names text and the current dialogue. Don't worry if you don't see anything in here, that's completely normal. As you can see, the default NPC name is blank, and the default current dialogue is blank, so that's completely fine. I'm going to rename this image to IMG NPC profile picture, and I'm going to resize it to something that I prefer, so about 150 and 150 for me. You can do anything you like. I'm going to go to the anchors, and I'm going to hold Control/Command and Shift, and I'm going to click the little button at the bottom with the corner, because then that'll anchor it at the bottom here. Meaning if your screen shrinks, it'll try to stay over at this corner. And then I'm just going to set the position to something that falls more in line to where I want it. Don't forget minus is up on this editor. Now that we have that, double check that is variable is ticked here, because otherwise you won't be able to access it in the code. And with that, you can save and compile. Now we're going to jump into the graph, and you want to scroll down until you see the part where it is setting the current dialogue line text and the NPC name text. This is inside the NPC dialogue line started, and once you're here, it's super simple to do. So what we need to do is grab the image NPC profile picture from the side, and I'm just going to drag it in and press get, and I'm going to drag off, and I'm going to say set brush. There we are. I can connect this up to the events here, and then from the brush I'm going to drag off, and I'm going to call make slate brush here. And if you open it up, you can see where you set your image here. So we just need a way to get a thumbnail or a profile picture from the current speaker. So let's have a look how we do that. So the way I've opted to show you in this method is on the NPC here. I'm going to open him up, and I'm going to simply add a variable here called profile picture, and I'm going to set it to a type of texture. There we are. I'm going to make sure I click the little eye button. And that's it. Now each NPC can have their own profile picture. So we need some pictures of the people. So there are multiple ways you can do this. What I'm going to do in my case is I'm just going to come up to my actor that I want the profile picture of. I'm going to hit the F key to focus on them. And I'm going to press G so I don't see any game mode stuff. I'm going to line him up nicely. I'm going to press escape so I don't select him, and I'm going to hit the three dots, and I'm going to simply hit high resolution screenshot, and I'm going to just click capture. Now it's going to take a screenshot, as we can see here. It has now took a screenshot of my character, and I'm going to go and do the exact same thing for the other guy. There we are, I've got another screenshot. So I have two screenshots of my actors now. You might want to use different screenshots, you might want to use an artistic interpretation, Photoshop it, whatever you want. I'm just going for the simple screenshots of them. So I'm going to simply rename them to the actors so I know who they are. And then once I have them, I'm going to drop them into my project. Here we are. So I'm going to just create a new folder, profile pictures, and I'm going to drop them in there. They should be nicely imported into Unreal momentarily. And now with that, I can assign their profile pictures. George the Doorman, and then I can also do Eric the Key Requester. There we are. So now back in your narrative default UI, what we can do from the speaker ID is drag off. We will set all actors with tag here, and we will need to drag this out all the way to the end. We will link it up in the exec and just sort out the lines a bit. Then from the out actors, we will just get the first item because we don't need them all. And then in here, we will cast to BP NPC, like so. Link your execs up, and then from the NPC, I'm going to come down and I'm going to say get profile picture. And then we can link this up to the image, and you can shrink this to make it a bit easier to manage. And that's it. We now have profile pictures linked up. So it will come in here from narrative. It will start the dialogue line, set the current text, set the NPC's name, and then set their profile picture. So you might notice when you start the game, the wax is always visible. This is a bug with narrative that I have raised, so it will be fixed eventually, but for now, it's a super simple fix. Go back into your narrative UI, designer, click the dialogue UI, and just set the visibility to be hidden. And don't worry, this isn't a bodge fix, it is actually what's meant to happen. If you go to the on dialogue line finish, you can see it sets everything to hidden anyway. So we're just recreating what what it's already going to do. You will have no negative effects from it. So hit compile save, and now if you run up to your characters, they will have profile pictures. Obviously you can make a much nicer profile picture, make it artistic style, make it do everything you want, put it anywhere you want, but now every time you talk to them they will have a profile picture. So as you can see, with a little tweak, it really can make a difference. And that's a way to implement profile pictures. You can also replace the textures with cameras using real-time textures if you want to also get a more realistic look. So the next way we are going to look at generating profile pictures is via editing the C++ of narrative. Now this is really easy to do and you shouldn't be worried about it, but we're going to go through it step by step together. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up the narrative dialog widget and find where I want to put the variable for narrative. So we need it to be somewhere generic, so it can't be on any single dialog node. So the place I'm going to put it is on class defaults in this speakers section here. We already have a default shot that we can use if we want to, but we also have the speaker ID and the node color. So if we find those inside narrative, we can just add a variable alongside of it saying profile picture, and then that way it's either optional or not optional, and then from narrative we can just pick it up and render it. So what you're going to want to do is open your engine folder and then jump into the engine, then the plugins, then marketplace, and define narrative. Inside of it you'll have the source code for narrative. So what you're going to need to do is copy this, because you can't compile it inside the engine folder, and take it to somewhere different. There. So I've got mine pasted here. Now you need to open this source code in any way you want. You can use Notepad, Visual Studio, Notepad++, Sublime. I'm going to use CLion, and you will see you'll have access to 3 projects inside narrative. Narrative, which drives actual narrative, the dialog editor, and the quest editor. Now what we need to do is find one of the variables that we're going to change. So I'm just going to do an entire search for default shot, and you can see we have quite a few references to default shot, but we only have one which is defined here. I'm going to go into it, and this section here you have a speaker ID, you have a node color, you have a level sequencer, and it's inside speaker info, which lines up perfectly. So all we're going to do here is I'm just going to copy the ID variable here. I'm just going to paste it probably under the sequence. I'm going to keep the category speaker details, blueprint read only, and edit anywhere. I will say I am not a C++ programmer. I don't know all the ins and outs, so if I have done something wrong, please feel free to correct me in the comments and I'll make an update video. So instead of fname, I'm going to call it uTexture2D for Unreal's version of a texture, and for the speaker ID I'm just going to call it profile picture, and I'm just going to give it a default of null pointer, which is what this other one seems to do. The only other exception we will get is we will get an error if we don't put a star here, which I believe is a pointer, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to change the comment. There we go. So there's the first bit, and then there's only one other bit we need to do, is duplicate this line here and just add profile picture, and this just gives it a default value, and that's all the code change we need to do. Like I said, it's like 3 lines of code, super simple. Now we just need to compile narrative. I'm not going to go super in depth on how we compile narrative because you can see my previous video here, but once you wrote all your code out, and this similar prospect will work for Windows to reuse the batch files, you can compile narrative and it will run through and then add your new variable into it. And with that, we have now compiled narrative. So what we can do is go to where we compiled it to, and as you can see here, I've created it into a new narrative folder. You can jump back into your engine and go into engine, plugins, marketplace. I'm just going to rename, and then you can paste it in here. I'm going to back up the old one just in case, and then I'm going to rename this to narrative. The only other thing you need to do is before you delete or remove narrative from the engine, jump into content and then narrative UI and widgets, take everything in this folder and then drop it into the new compiled narrative UI widgets folder. Otherwise, because you've just recompiled narrative, you will lose your duplicate profile pictures version. And now you can restart Unreal. And with Unreal restarted, you can jump into your dialog and you will see we now have a profile picture section. It's that simple. So all we can do now is we can come in here. So we're on Eric the key requester. So if I go Eric the key requester and put his profile picture in there, we can save and compile. And then we're going to jump back over to the narrative widgets, narrative UI widgets, and I'm going to open up, and now we can simply go into narrative default UI profile pictures, and you can see everything will remain the same. The only difference we will do is where you set the profile picture on the NPC line dialog started, you can see we have a speaker profile picture, which means we no longer need to get all actors or cast it to an NPC. We can just delete that off. We can connect it back up to the set brush, and instead of getting the profile picture, we can simply get the speaker's profile picture into the image like so. And the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my NPC PC, and I'm just going to delete the profile picture because we don't need it anymore. And now when you try it, everything will still work the exact same, but this time the variable is built solely inside C++ and is super generic. Perfect. So thank you for watching. I hope this helped. If you have any issues, please comment below, and if you have any suggestions for future tutorials, please let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.